Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 115, and I'll be talking to Jelayna Da Silva. Jelayna found yoga in 2006. By 2010, it had become her constant companion, helping her heal her body, mind after 10 years of competitive rowing, including 4 years of scholarship at University of Kansas. Graduating with a degree in psychology, she went on to coach many athletes at home and abroad. In 2013, she completed her 250 hours of teacher training in yoga, Tree Studios, and followed with 100 hours of hands-on adjustment with Mysore training at Downward Dog Studio. At the start of 2020, she completed her 40 hours of Yin Yoga Training with Shawna Turner. Her classes are moving meditations intended to guide students into a deeper relationship with themselves by leading them through methodical flow awakening the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. Encouraging students with a light-hearted humor and challenging boundaries with creative sequences. Her hope is to leave students feeling centered and refreshed, ready to take their yoga off the mat and into the day of their lives. Enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome to Jelayna. How are you?
I am doing very well. How are you?
I am well. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name up. Um, Good to see you, and I'm glad you're here to share your wisdom, your story, your insights of you and this beautiful union that I've seen you have with yoga and all the other pieces that ripple out from that, the influence and the impact and all that deliciousness that comes out of you when you get to share with everybody else. So I'm delighted to have this conversation, and I'm curious to delve into more about you and your journey.
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, that's one of the most eloquent descriptions I've heard of how the yoga is received. So thank you for that. That was a gift.
Absolutely, yes.
Um, yeah, yoga's kind of snuck into my life in unexpected ways.
Mm,
As far as where it began for me, I had just finished my rowing career in university, and I was looking for something to kind of fill the space where that physical movement was. And I'd spent the better part of like 15 years telling my body to submit, which
mm,
was what you do as a trained athlete. You learn to push past the pain and ignore your body's cues. And then I found yoga, which was the antithesis of that. And it asks you to slow down and listen and dial in, which was just so counterintuitive, but it was what my body was craving at that point. And I also found it incredibly physically challenging, as anyone who's done downward dog for the first time will tell you.
right.
It's not easy. Like everyone's like, this is a resting pose. Get real.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Um, so that was in 2006. I wandered into the campus gym and I found a yoga teacher named Matt, which I thought was really eloquent, Yoga Matt. And he was just so exuberant and so lovely and inclusive, and that kind of planted the seed. And I just kept getting drawn towards it and practicing it. And then when I moved to Toronto, it's such a mecca for
Mm,
yoga. There's studios on every corner, and I was working
mm,
at a nonprofit at the time, and it was kind of a high stress position. And there was a yoga studio on my way home every day, and so I started going there quite religiously. And it started to get under my skin even more, and I realized that I wanted to do my teacher training. And
yeah.
And as luck would have it, I ended up losing my job. That company
Mm,
went $2 million in the red, and I'd been hemming and hawing about doing my yoga teacher training, and then that was the moment where I realized, okay, now or never.
yeah.
So I threw myself into that. I was working full time and teaching probably 10 to 12 yoga classes a week, which I don't recommend. Don't do that. I was doing the do as I say, not as I do. I'm like, everybody rest. Meanwhile, I'm going like 7 days a week and,
Yeah.
ignoring my own cues because it's a lifelong journey. And then eventually shifted to teaching full time. And I've spent the last, ooh, 11 years now teaching yoga.
Mm,
And
wow.
it's been, uh, it's been really special.
Been a ride, huh? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What do you believe about yourself? And does it define who you are now?
That's a good question. The pandemic actually forced me to look at how I had aligned a lot of my identity with teaching yoga because
Mm,
as studios started to shut down and opportunities became less and less, my role as teacher started to shift and morph, and losing the work opportunities, it kind of forced me to look inward and seek value elsewhere. It's still a big part of my identity, and I consider it a gift that I have that I've had the privilege to hone and create and dive into. Um, but ultimately, I had to learn to let go of attributing my value to that position and seeing it more as like a privilege and an opportunity. So it was a real kind of twist that I wasn't expecting, but ended up being really healthy because it reminds you how multifaceted we are, and it doesn't have to just be one avenue. So yeah, I have a different relationship with it now than I do say like 5 years ago than I would have
mm,
back then. So
yeah.
it's something that feels more like a treat and a pleasure as well.
Beautiful. What do you
Mhm.
believe is your calling? Maybe now or what you felt it was before to now? What's the shift? Because I believe we have multiple callings, right? We have multiple things that drive us and feed us, and that puts us in a position to move forward. So where are you sitting with that now?
It's again, interesting question. I was raised Christian, don't really identify as such anymore, more of a
Mm,
universalist approach, but there's still teachings within that faith that I find myself drawn to. And there's this one prayer from St. Francis of Assisi, who's my favorite saint because he liked to hang out in nature and he wasn't really into the material things, so he's kind of my dude. And just the start of his prayer is, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. And for me,
mm,
that's something that has been a guide when it comes to choosing things that not only fill my cup, but can help me become a conduit for that. So, teaching yoga was a big part of that, where I could feel an energy flow through me and to other
yeah.
people. And I offer a sequence, I offer
Mhm.
the peace and the capacity to hold space. And then however that manifests is wonderful. And that's kind of led me to the next step, which is getting my master's in counseling psychology. So
Right.
a different realm of like, how can I offer peace to people? So
Mm,
um, I see that as the overall calling. Like, what are things that are going to guide me towards being able to facilitate peace for myself and for others?
mm,
Is the guiding light.
beautiful. Big.
Yeah, just small goals. Nothing.
That's it. Nothing, nothing else to do.
But I mean, it's like it's as simple as like sitting with a friend when they're sad, or call like sending someone text to let them know that you're thinking of them, or taking care of someone's pet while they're out of town. Just like all of those things are ways in which we can show up and facilitate peace for other people. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's the little things.
I find it interesting when I think it's a natural and perhaps an innate process of whether you've been born and raised in an organized religion or not. That somehow on this path of self-discovery and even being in a place of mastery, if you will, of a skill, a tool, part of your life, something that we do for a living, so to speak,
Mhm.
takes us down this trajectory of figuring out what is it I enjoy, and maybe asking those bigger, bolder questions of what is it I want out of life? If it's, if somebody has children, to raise my kids, for them to be and have more than what I had, or to
Mhm.
really cherish and love this four-legged animal that I have. Whatever it is, I think it's an innate process that we navigate in and out through this the all facets of what we call a life.
Mhm.
You and I were both born and raised in a religion, but there were many that I've come across who weren't.
Mm.
And how they end up skirting in and around, be it going into an organized religion or coming out from it. I find that really a fascinating space that puts people in an alignment or not
Mhm.
to themselves. And it
Yeah.
seems like that happened for you in many, many ways. But the bigger caveat there is your awareness was already open.
Mm.
Receive it.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah. I find that there's eternal truths that exist within most faiths that people can tune into. And when you end up stepping out of those worlds, those truths just continue to follow you. Like
Mm,
I've had so many conversations with people where they'll ultimately come to the conclusion that, I should be kind and
mm,
try and be a good person and think of others, and just those basic precepts that can be found inside and outside of a
right.
religion. Like no one can lay claim to those things.
Yeah.
And those truths I definitely find are what help to bring people in alignment with themselves. And almost ironically, it almost always ends up being in a path of helping other people. And that
Right.
usually brings us in alignment with us. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like you have to know yourself, but in the same breath, not get stuck in the knowing. Because, like, I'm sure you probably experienced this where people go on these spiritual journeys and it becomes so introspective, it's like borders on narcissistic. And then they
Mm,
don't turn that energy outwards
mm,
to the rest of the
mm.
world. So, and it's like that in the yoga world as well, where
Yeah.
they'll, go on this journey of self discovery and then they get stuck in the self. But
Right.
yoga means union, and
Mm,
unifying with those around you and not just what's happening inside you is a big part of it. So
mm.
it's an interesting dance to see happen as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure you've got to witness that in many, many ways. Yeah.
Yeah. In students and in myself too, it's enticing to just stay in your inner world and kind of unpack things and untangle stuff. And but if you get stuck there, it's kind of boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We all and well, we all need change, whether we embrace it or not. That's a that's a different conversation. But
Hmm.
we all need change though. It's
Yeah.
inevitable, right? What do you feel are some of the attributes that connected you to this purpose of offering peace and support and guidance to a certain degree in many forms to others? What?
Uh, I think it was a few things as far as just being able to want to offer peace to others. Growing up, experienced being bullied and ostracized. And when you go through that, you don't want anybody else to
Right,
feel othered or outside or left out. And so I think that's informed a lot of how I move through space and how I relate to other people. So it's one of those
right,
mixed blessings where it's like you wish it never happened, but when it grows your capacity for compassion, it's that double-edged sort of experience. And then I've always loved teaching. I've always
mm,
loved learning and then being able to offer that information to other people and then have them discover it for
right,
themselves. And especially within yoga, like I like knowing something for myself and then offering the information to them and then seeing how people receive that and how they experience it in their own body. Because I'll never actually know how downward dog feels for you. I'll
right.
never, know that for
Right.
sure. I can kind of sort of relate, but just being able to offer information and have people discover it for themselves and watch that light bulb moment go off. Because I coached rowing before I found teaching
Mm.
yoga. And yeah, I just loved being able to be that facilitator of like passing on information and remembering the people before me that gave me that
Mhm.
information. That's one of the things that I like about the Ashtanga tradition. Not so much the movements because those are crazy go nuts.
Right.
No offense to any Ashtangis, I'm sorry. Disclaimer, it's very impressive and all that, but you'll
Yes.
hurt your hamstrings. Um,
Yes.
but they do a listing of the teachers that came before at the start of the
Right.
practice, and they
Okay.
go through that lineage. And so there's that sense of like, I learned this from my rowing coach, and now I get to pass it on to you. And I learned this from my yoga teacher, and now I get to
Mm.
pass this on to you. So it's like honoring those that came before or that shone the light
Mm.
for you.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are things that I think definitely like drew me towards this. And you get to feel a part of something, and then you can't you it's impossible not to learn from your students. Like the day that you think that
Mm.
they have nothing to teach you is the day you're in trouble, because there's always
Mhm.
reciprocity there if you're willing to put
Yeah.
yourself in the space to receive it.
Yeah.
Because their innate wisdom runs deep as well. And just watching people experience their bodies, their breath, the feedback after the fact, or all of that is really cool.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
while it's been equally nourishing, if you will, for you and possibly all the students in the room who you guide,
Mhm.
what is the ultimate intention that you have with this practice and maybe even the masters that you're taking on, all those components that
Mhm.
bring that opportunity to say, this is who I am, this is what I've learned, and here's what I'm presenting and wanting to share with you. What's the ultimate, if you will, for now, intention with that craft that you are harnessing and mastering even further?
Ironically, I think it's about getting out of my own way,
Mm.
and becoming a person that can facilitate an experience that allows people to also get out of their own way, to like find themselves and work through things um, in a realistic way. Um, with the yoga, it's about understanding the body and how to live in the body in a good and helpful way. And with the psychology, it's how to exist in your mind.
Mhm.
And those two things are inextricably linked, as well as the spiritual, which I know you
Mm.
could speak to probably
Mhm.
much
Mhm.
better than I could. But those worlds are all intertwined. Um, so I think it's about quieting those spaces down so that you can allow that kind of innate peace and wisdom that exists in your center to rise to the surface and learn to trust that. Um, as I learn these things, as I learn more about yoga, as I learn more about psychology, inevitably you come into that headspace of realizing that you know nothing. Um, so never being in that place of assuming that you know it all. So
Yeah.
continuing to stay in that place of humility, I think, is key, so that I can facilitate those experiences for people. So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
beautiful. It's beautiful.
hope that makes sense.
Abs- Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we can
Yeah.
also get into a space of, as we go on a path of discovery, um, I want to say in the unknown world,
Mm,
we can perhaps get into a place of, yes, being humble, but maybe saboteur to a certain degree of saying, okay, now I really don't know anything.
mm-hmm,
Yet I've been challenged with that, but we do know something. And it's
mm-hmm.
okay to step into that. Yes, I know this.
Yeah.
And yes, this is a skill that's been developed and it's been learned and it's been taught, and I know how to navigate through it. And all of those pieces in between, I think that's a really slippery slope that a lot of people can get on as they delve further and further into that space of, I gotta be humble. I can't let
Yeah,
ego take over. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
this is not going to happen. Like, come on. You've been through something. So let's
yeah,
just honor that and take claim that you are aware of and you can guide and teach others through.
totally. Like I think there in the last several years there was like a vilification of the word ego, not
Yes.
understanding that we need ego to function. It's something that needs to be created and facilitated and emptied out to an extent, but like you need to build the structure
Right.
first. Like so much of the first part of our life is finding out what we're capable of
Yeah.
and building those skill sets. And then the second part becomes a place of, like you said, acknowledging what it is that we've mastered and understand, and then emptying out so that we can be in a place of service for other people. But I've definitely felt that even as I've like shifted from Toronto to Niagara, going into these new spaces to teach, I found myself having to really step into my authority because like people were approaching me as if I was a new teacher and I would have to make it very clear. I'm like, no, I've been doing this for 10
Mm-hmm.
years
Mm-hmm.
and I know what I'm doing. And and like walking that line of like not getting too frustrated because you have to start over. You know, you're going into a new community and offering your services and recognizing that yes, you have knowledge, but you have to build the relationship and the trust
Yeah.
um, to hold that knowledge. So yeah, ego's tricky, but it's necessary.
It's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, we won't be getting out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We need that motivation. So, oh, Freud, he
I
even
know.
called it super ego.
Yes.
He
The
had a
more
lot of
we
ego.
know. Yes, yes. But the more we know, the better we're off for it, right? To a certain degree. As long
Yeah,
as we can put
exactly.
an implementation on it. So it does matter. It does matter for sure. For sure.
Hmm.
So you've had quite a journey and you're still so young.
Yeah, well,
What um but with all the experiences from the rowing to, I want to say corporate, but I'm not 100% sure whether it was corporate, that environment that you got laid off in, to now marrying all these pieces together.
mm.
What's next?
A nap. No, I
Exactly.
I think I'm just really enjoying being able to learn right now. Being back in school has been a surprisingly fun experience, like meeting other
Mm,
like-minded individuals and diving into a subject that I've always been obsessed with. Like I studied psychology in university and my father's a therapist and I avoided it forever because, my father's a therapist. But
right.
after I went full circle and, built my own ego up and discovered what it is that I could do, I've come back to it now and it feels like home and a good space. So I'm just really enjoying that. And I'm holding it loosely in that I don't want to try and predict what it is that I'll end up doing with the degree. I kind of want to let it reveal itself as I'm learning because there's a lot of information I don't quite know and want to see
Mm,
what that guides me towards. I know what I'm interested in doing, as like a young woman who's struggled with depression or eating issues, things like that. I would want to be able to help that population. And,
mhm,
I went through a lot of mental health struggles in university. I know that being able to relate to people that are going through struggles that I've been through as well would be where I see things leading. But in the same breath, I want to kind of hold it loosely and see where the information takes me. So
yeah. It's exciting
yeah,
times ahead, that's for sure.
yeah, and
Steph,
terrifying.
yeah, but that's what makes it exciting though, right?
Exactly, the fear.
That's what, yeah,
Yeah.
the opportunities of what else can unfold really, I think is where
Hmm.
the magic is. I'm
Hmm.
curious to get your take on the awareness of individuals as you've moved your practice in different geographical locations? Because I know you've done stuff overseas and things like that, and how you've seen that shift maybe before and after COVID. be it you being at the front of the room facilitating or participating, but really tuning in, because I think part of that journey of yoga allows individuals allows individuals to tune in energetically. Whether they engage and operate with it, that's a different conversation, but it gives
Hmm.
them that opportunity to say, oh, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening. What
Yeah.
has been your take on that over the last little while? I mean, I said before COVID, and maybe even way, way, way before COVID, to where we
Yeah.
kind of have landed now. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely been a shift. I think before COVID and being based in Toronto, like a lot of that yoga culture manifests the zeitgeist of the city, which is a bit of a
Mm,
hustle culture. And people are go, go, go. They want to do the vinyasa, they want to do the hot yoga, they want to be moving so that it kind of matches the momentum that they've built up in their own lives. And there's the yin and the restorative and all that, but that was definitely what people were drawn to, and rooms were busy, and it was about that challenge, and it was a fun energy, and you can feed off of each other and all of that,
yeah,
and it still has a space for it, even within that time of just kind of wanting to conquer and move forward and whatever else on your yoga mat or in life. More often than not, people came to yoga after life kind of broke them in some way, and they needed
right.
to heal and come back to themselves, or realign energy, realizing, oh, maybe I can't do, F45 7 times a week. I have to find a balance here or something like that. So that's always kind of been the undertone. And then COVID came and just ripped stability
Hmm.
out from under everyone, and their
Hmm.
reality shifted. And so a lot more people started to come to the mat seeking yin or
Hmm.
restorative or things that helped them replenish, because when the world stopped, I think a lot of people realized just how tired they already were, because the pace of what modern life requires of us is somewhat untenable. And so it gave them a chance to feel that. And then as things have picked up again, people have thrown themselves back at the pace, but they've been finding they keep hitting walls a little bit faster. Like, people are not okay. Like,
Hmm.
COVID really messed a lot of
Hmm.
um, equilibriums up. And so, the yin classes are a lot busier these days, I find.
Yeah.
And that seeking of meditation or yoga nidra has really
Hmm.
bubbled to the surface, because there's that exhaustion, that need to look inward and kind of reorganize our thoughts so that they can help serve us and those around us better. So that's definitely been the shift. That being said, being in Niagara versus being in Toronto, it's like a different kind of culture there. Um, but it's been interesting to see. And then, like, even practicing in places like Paris or New York or even like London, it's a different kind of energy depending on which
Hmm.
city you're going to, and how that plays out on the mat. So I always like to say how people show up on the mat is how people show up in life,
Yeah.
which is interesting to see. So if there's someone that can't sit still on their mat, chances are they can't do it in their life either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Very revealing, very telling of not only the individual, but what's going on in these pockets of of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
We're exhausted. I will say that much.
but the interesting component of that is we knew it.
Hmm.
We just needed the additional polarity to highlight even further. And
Hmm.
COVID was the polarity of it.
Yeah. It gave a lot of people permission to slow down. Like, we
Mm,
were forced to stop, and so it created this desire for balance. That's why we had like the great resignation. Everyone was
yeah,
like, peace out, I gotta go live my life. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
It is interesting. And what do you predict, let's say, or forecast for what's to come?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I think there's this growing understanding that you really can't separate mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health from
Mm,
one another. Like, I like seeing these holistic healthcare centers where you have, the
right.
the physiotherapist and the acupuncturist and the therapist, like
The
everyone's all in
osteopath
one
and the
place,
naturopath.
and
Yeah.
we've so
Yeah.
it's in different areas in the world more so than in North America, I would say, like
Yeah.
more of that holistic approach,
Yeah.
and I think we're gonna see more of that sneaking in as, people are either don't get what they need from major systems in place, be it medical or what else. Like they're going to look for what are called alternatives, but
Yeah.
see more as supplementary and
Yeah.
you know aid in the process. So realizing that those two worlds don't have to be at odds with each other, but can
Right.
complement each other. I think I see a lot of that, and there's a nice shift in the yoga world away from just doing things because that's how they've been done over time. Like a lot of people are challenging those norms and being like, no, let's look at anatomy, let's look at kinesiology, let's look at histology, and let's look at these
Right.
movements and make them healthier and more sustainable. And a lot of the teachers that I follow are rewriting the rule book, so to speak. So,
Nice.
like when we're doing a bridge lift in yoga, it used to be like, don't squeeze your glutes. And now we're like, well, that was the stupidest thing ever. Squeeze your glutes kind of thing. So letting
Right.
that information evolve depending on what science is telling us and realizing that science and mysticism within the practice of yoga don't have to be at odds with each other. They can complement. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that
Hmm.
happen and like a shift away from a dualistic mindset and seeing it more as like a spectrum. So,
Yeah. Which kind of brings us full circle into the beginning of the conversation, saying it in the past, perhaps, and yoga, the founding principles of it was this
hmm
as other strength training was this.
hmm
But there is ultimately that weave, just as there was in religion or non-religion, there's still a weave of a basic foundation principles of how one can live through the world on a mental space, be it through prayer, be it through faith or whatever you believe. But yoga is weaving its way through other very, I want to say, masculine, driven, very forced kind of movement. It's
hmm
weaving and creating that match all over again in a way that we can perhaps receive now
Yeah,
in North
exactly.
America.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. May I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I was just kind of curious if you've kind of witnessed a similar trend or maybe something a little different in the clients that you've worked with pre and post COVID, like what that's looked like for you as far as how people are showing up.
Absolutely. The pre-COVID clientele were those who were striving for more, but on their own fruition, just because they
Mm,
were curious or they had other things that were alarming to them, but not as glaringly loud that they wanted to look into. So they were the individuals. Whereas now it's people who are almost literally at the end of their tether.
mm,
They don't know what side is up. Life is looking very hectic and chaotic, feeling like they need to be productive and in a space of doing every single minute of the day. And if there's no goal and objective where there's a checklist at the end, there's no accomplishment. And then the self-saboteur comes in. But the mental anguish and pain is reflected through their physical ailments, and it'll show
mm,
up on a physical sense. And we've kind of known that anyways. When we don't
mm-hmm,
deal with emotional clutter, it'll show up in the physical with a sore back, a disease, or something like that.
mm-hmm,
Post COVID, most of my clients are either in that space, high achievers who are high achieving and some in the corporate
mm,
space, but also high achievers in the holistic space, going, but I want to give more, but you don't have more to give.
mm-hmm, mm, yeah.
So we need to clear everything that you're bringing into your space so that you're not holding space for everybody all the time because they've already cleared it and you've just taken it That's not the journey of somebody who's in the healing space, be it a yogi, be it an osteopath, be it a Reiki practitioner, whomever it is. When we deal with this space of energetics, we can often fall into a place of taking the responsibility from others.
Yeah.
That's not
Doing
how
the
it
work for them.
works, right? We
Yeah.
got to learn to transition it and transmute and transform it. And that's the shift that I've seen is those who are energetically sensitive are coming more online and saying, I need help with this.
Hmm.
Be it from a very cognitive space, be it the therapist world, but even the energetic space. So it's really interesting that it's just kicked up the dust, if you will, for everybody.
Yeah. The healers need healing.
Everybody needs it. Everybody
Yeah.
needs it, not from an egoic standpoint, not from a real obvious place, like everybody needs water, but from a
Hmm.
place of honor yourself that you need support too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you find that when you come across someone that's really aligned their value with doing, do you find that people are available to possibly unlearning that? Or like, does that look really sticky, the process of letting go of, attributing their value to what they do rather than who they are?
I see that more from a plane of what's causing the doing
Mm,
and what is the resistance behind being. So then I
mm,
tap into the space of the divine feminine, the divine masculine energies, and look at what's the pull and push that's showing up in this lifetime, but also on a karmic level, but ancestral lineage and all of those areas is where I actually delve and support clients in. That's where I pull out the root of whatever the issue is that's showing up at surface level. And we go all the way
nice.
to the root, to this, ultimately to the seat of your soul,
Yeah.
and be able to clear from there. Then it doesn't show up at face level because you've just cleared and assisted and guided and supported all your ancestors in the back who were sitting there going, is she gonna get this big wake-up call, another one, or do we need to throw another one at her because she ain't listening loud enough?
Yeah. I
We've
love
all had
that.
those, right? We've all had
Yeah.
those. And that's where we get to say everything is energy.
Mm,
And we get to be part of this journey. We can either
yeah.
do it actively or we can just continue to walk around with his hands on ears and not hear anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with that, especially when it comes to energy. And like the
Yeah.
more I teach yoga in particular, the more I find I have to do these little disclaimers when I'm talking to people that might not be in the same headspace where I'm like, not to sound like a like a yoga teacher here, but also like when you meet a person for the first time, or when you're listening to your intuition, or when you're encountering something new and you can just sense, like so much of it
Yeah.
is energy. And when you look at it from the metaphysical plane, it's energy.
That's
So,
right. Right.
yeah,
And we're
that's
not
really
even
cool.
touching religion. So people, this is just science. Like that
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even have
it's
to go there.
we don't even have to touch religion. Yeah, that's not even there.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love
But
that
I'm
approach. I love
excited.
that you go, like,
Yeah.
right at the root, just, like, right down into it.
Look, we've all done band-aids. I did 20 odd years of band-aids. Or plasters, as I would normally say, but welcome to North American culture.
Yeah,
Band-aid.
I follow.
We just want to stick a plaster on it and la la la, not look at it again.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like you. I mean, being in a space of sometimes recognizing and honoring, I actually like this and I enjoy doing it.
Mhm.
And people have said to me, I'm good at it. So,
Yeah.
okay, maybe there's some merit here. Maybe I need to follow this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
nice when the cues are that clear as well, and you can just lean into it and let it happen and don't overthink it.
yeah,
It's really lovely.
yeah. Well, the clarity comes after constant repetition because the
Yes.
clarity comes when we go, okay, now what do you want me to hear? Because we don't always listen, right? You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
we
No, I
don't.
totally get that. The
We
10,000
don't.
hours matter.
They do. Yes, they're a real thing. They're a real thing
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
yeah.
But I'm excited and thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, and your wisdom and your insight because there's a lot there and I really am excited to see what's going to happen next for you as you ease into this pattern of what else is possible.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is an absolute pleasure. And same,
Yeah,
learned a lot.
yeah, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.